Have you ever really stopped to think about what's going on inside your head when you drink that morning coffee? Or, something a lot more intense. Today, we're going to peel back the layers and look at the actual chemical blueprint of how different substances from the totally normal to the extreme basically hijack our brains. Let's dive in.
I mean, on the surface, they seem like they're from different planets, right? One is this completely normal morning ritual we all do, and the other, well, it's a dangerous and illegal high. But here's the thing. On a chemical level, they're actually way more similar than you'd guess. So what's the secret connection?
And the answer is surprisingly simple. They all hijack your brain's natural systems. See, no drug actually invents a new feeling out of thin air. All they do is grab the volume knob on the emotions and sensations you already have and crank it up, turn it way down, or just shut it off completely. To really get a handle on how these substances work, we're going to use a simple 4-part blueprint for each one. We'll look at the onset, how it starts, the peak, the high itself, the come down, what happens after, and maybe most importantly, the cost. All right, let's see how this plays out. Okay, first up, stimulants. The name pretty much says it all, right? These are the drugs that kick your brain into overdrive. Everything feels faster, sharper, and way more intense.
Let's start with the undisputed champion of stimulants on planet Earth, caffeine. Now here's a mind bender for you. Caffeine doesn't actually give you energy. Nope. It's more like a chemical trickster. It basically puts a block on the signals in your brain that are trying to tell you you're tired. The result, you get that temporary feeling of focus and alertness. But the moment that caffeine wears off, that whole wave of exhaustion you were holding back comes crashing down. Nicotine. Now that works on a much, much faster schedule. It gives you this instant little hit of dopamine, which feels like a moment of calm and focus. But here's the trap, and it's a clever one. The relief you feel from that next cigarette, that's not really relaxation. It's just you temporarily silencing the withdrawal symptoms that were caused by the last one. It's a vicious cycle.
Cocaine is like a dopamine supernova. It just unleashes this massive, overwhelming flood of the stuff, creating this short-lived but incredibly intense feeling of euphoria, of being invincible. But you know the saying, what goes up must come down, and the crash is just as extreme, leaving you with anxiety, exhaustion, and this desperate, gnawing craving to get right back to that peak.
This slide just nails the difference between two of the most powerful stimulants out there. If cocaine is a flash fire, burning hot and fast, the methamphetamine is a raging inferno. It can keep you going for hours, sometimes even days. But all that energy has to come from somewhere, right? It's basically taking out a massive energy loan from your future self. And believe me, that bill always comes due.
All right, let's flip the script and look at the other side of the coin, the depressants. These are the substances that slow everything down, that bring on that feeling of calm, relaxation, and quiet.
This quote, it just perfectly captures the paradox of alcohol. It is a depressant, but the very first thing it depresses are your inhibitions. And that's why you feel more confident, more relaxed at first. But as you keep drinking, it starts shutting down other, more critical functions, your judgment, your coordination, all while whispering in your ear, hey, you're doing great.
So then you have benzodiazepines. Think Xanax or Valium. They're incredibly powerful anti-anxiety meds. What they do is they amplify your brain's natural off switch. But if you use them too often, your brain, which is super adaptive, it starts to change. It produces less of its own calming chemicals and even starts removing the very receptors that listen for that signal. Your brain essentially forgets how to calm itself down. And that's exactly what makes them so addictive and so dangerous to stop without a doctor's help. Opioids are a whole different beast. They basically hijack your body's endorphin system and tell your brain to just ignore all pain signals. I'm talking both physical and emotional pain. The result is this profound sense of warmth and safety, this euphoria that feels like being wrapped in a protective cocoon. It's not a party drug, it's a make-the-world disappear drug. But the come down from opioids, that is a special kind of hell. The drug literally rewires your survival instincts. Your brain starts to believe it needs the opioid to live, just like it needs food and water. And at that point, you're not even using to get high anymore. You're just using to feel normal, to escape the unbelievable pain of withdrawal. So, our last category is probably the most mysterious of all, the psychedelics and dissociatives. These are the drugs that don't just mess with how you feel, they completely change how you perceive reality itself. Cannabis is, without a doubt, the most widely used drug in this category. Its main active ingredient, THC, Fits like a key into a lock for a natural system in our brain called the endocannabinoid system. The system helps regulate, well, almost everything: mood, appetite, memory. And that's why hijacking it can have such a huge range of effects. For some people, it leads to creativity and relaxation. For others, it can flip a switch on anxiety and paranoia. It really all depends on the person, the dose, and the setting.
MDMA, also known as ecstasy or Molly, is famous for one thing: creating these intense feelings of empathy, love, and connection. It does this by basically forcing your brain to dump its entire supply of serotonin, the happy chemical. But of course, that happiness has a price. The next day, your serotonin tank is completely empty, which can lead to that infamous midweek slump of depression and irritability while your brain works overtime just to restock.
Wow, this quote just perfectly describes what it's like to experience a classic psychedelic like LSD. See, it's not really about seeing dragons or pink elephants. It's about seeing the world and your own place in it in a completely new light. It disrupts the brain's normal filtering system, so the boundaries between you and everything around you can just start to dissolve. It can be profound and sometimes absolutely terrifying.
Ketamine is really in a class of its own. It's a dissociative. That means it can make you feel completely disconnected from your own body and your surroundings. It works as a powerful anesthetic, blocking the signals between your mind and your senses. At high doses, this can lead to what people call the K-hole, a state of total sensory detachment that can feel either blissful or like a waking nightmare.
So, after all of that, what's the one thing that every single one of these drugs has in common? From your morning coffee all the way to ketamine, they all force your brain into this frantic, high-stakes chemical balancing act. This slide is basically the brain's balance sheet. It shows the hidden cost of every high. That burst of focus from caffeine, you pay for it later with a headache and a crash. That incredible euphoria from cocaine, it's paid for with a period where you literally can't feel pleasure at all. Every single high has a corresponding low because, when it comes to brain chemistry, there is absolutely no such thing as a free lunch.
And that right there brings us to the most crucial point of this whole thing. Your brain is a master of balance. It's always trying to get back to equilibrium. The high is just a temporary, forceful shove away from that balance. The come down, the withdrawal, the addiction, all of that is just your brain's desperate and powerful attempt to get back to normal.
So if we think about it that way, if every high is just a loan taken out from your future self, the question we're left with is this: what's the interest rate? And at what point does that interest rate just become too high to pay? That's a question only you can answer.